Welcome to Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. We continue to be supportive of our candidates and introducing you, our audience, to candidates running for governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer, and also land commissioner. Those candidates who have accepted our invitation are being introduced to you right here on KCHF TV and Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater. We're giving them a whole half hour so you can get to know them, not just sound bites here and there or maybe 30 seconds on the radio. We're giving you a whole half hour because these positions are very important in our lives, and you and I, we have the power to put in power the people we want to regulate our lives, to have control over our lives. So if we want a lot of control or a little control, it's up to us when we vote. The primary is, of course, this coming June 2nd. It's a Tuesday, and the general election is Tuesday, November 3rd. Today I'm going to introduce you to Juan De Jesus Sanchez. He's on the Democratic ballot running for state land commissioner. And we're going to find out why he would like to serve in that position and serve all of us as land commissioners. So stay with us as we meet Juan De Jesus Sanchez right after this. Juan De Jesus Sanchez is running as a Democrat in the Democratic primary. This is the first year, though, that independents in declined state can vote in this upcoming primary. When you get to the poll, you just ask for a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot, and you get to choose who you'd like to vote for on those particular ballots. But Juan De Jesus Sanchez is a Democrat running on the Democratic ballot. Welcome to Issues and Answers, Juan. Thanks so much for throwing your hat in the ring as state land commissioner.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I love any opportunity I can to talk to voters and people out around New Mexico.
This is the first time you're running for a statewide, I shouldn't say first time, you're a very young man running for a statewide office, but you were successful as running for vice chair for the Democratic Party just when you were 24 years old, and you were vice chair to Deb Haaland, who was running for governor, who was the chair of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's right. That was 2015 to 2017. I had just graduated from college and wanted to find a way to get involved. And, I had a lot of really great support across the state and a lot of great folks that believed in me. So I was able to serve the Democratic Party as the vice chair for 2 years then. Took a break and am back about 10 years later getting ready to run for land commissioner here in New Mexico.
Your family is from ranching family, farming family, conservation advocate, running and living in Valencia County and Socorro County. Right now you're in Los Chavez, which is in Valencia.
That's
you
right.
And your family are living in Valencia County.
That's right. So it's my wife. We have a 5-month-old daughter that we just had, and a couple dogs and some goats, and we try and grow as much of our own food as we can out there. And we really love being out there. Love going back to a place where in the area that I grew up.
I knew about your goat, I think Simone and MJ.
Those are the ones.
But I didn't know about your daughter. Congratulations.
Yes.
I thought, this gentleman has 4 dogs and 2 goats named on his website.
Yeah.
You got to put your daughter. What's her name?
Her name is Eliana. She was just born in October of last year. So we are, it's been a bit of a whirlwind being a new father and running for statewide office. But I've just been blessed so much, and we're so happy.
Tell our audience about the history of the state land office and why that's so significant in all of our lives, how it affects us education-wise, but also with our water, which is so precious and near and dear and essential to all of us.
Yeah, so the state land office, it manages 9 million acres of state trust land. That's essentially New Mexico's public lands. And 9 million acres of state trust lands, surface lands, and 13 million acres of subsurface mineral rights. So we're talking about oil and gas, mining, those types of things. Essentially, in 1912, whenever New Mexico became a state with the Enabling Act, the federal government gave us a ton of land and said, use this land to pay for your education, use this land to find different ways to generate revenue to help make sure that the state is successful. So it's been a process. It's been over 100 years that the land office has been a part of our life, and it generates somewhere between $2 and $3 billion a year annually. That money ends up going to some of our larger funds, the Permanent Land Grant Fund that helps ends up paying for education. Close to half of our education gets paid for from money that comes from our state lands. So it's a really important position because not only is it making sure that we're preserving and protecting land, not only for today, but for future generations, but it also helps generate the funding that helps our education system, which is hugely important here in the state.
And that's what keeps our property taxes down, because so much of our education is funded not like other states from property taxes, but from really the oil and gas industry. So does that money that's produced by the royalties of the oil and gas industry come through the land office?
Yes. So of the $2 to $3 billion that I spoke of, about 97% annually comes from oil and gas.
Oh, about $3 billion.
So
okay,
it's
$3 billion through the land office.
Through the land office. And
Okay.
essentially what happens is that money goes into the permanent land grant fund. Then that money gets invested, and then a percentage of the yield that comes back from that money pays for education. So it's a pretty complex process, but the money that it ends up going into this fund, and we have the second largest fund in the country that we're able to invest this money, and the money that we get back ends up paying for education.
I think it would be 70 billion.
Something in that area.
We're not a poor state, we're a very rich state. But I didn't realize, Juan, that 97% came from the oil and gas industry. That means the other 3% comes from cattle grazing, payments,
renewable energy, things like that, yes.
And other extractions. But mainly the oil and gas extraction, royalties paid by companies who use our land and extract our minerals.
Yep.
97% goes to the land office.
Yeah, so those minerals that are under our land right now, they belong to New Mexicans. Essentially what we do is we pay the oil and gas companies come in and they pay a royalty rate to be able to take out that money ends up goes into the permanent land grant fund and is generated through the state land office.
And the rest is grazing rights. We have a lot of grazing.
A huge amount. The majority of the land in the state trust land is used for grazing rights. Then renewable energy, we're seeing solar, wind, transmission, those types of things. Geothermal, one of the things that you could start exploring. And then there's also some outdoor rec opportunities as well. So, I'm a hunter, right? So I pay for my hunting license every single year. And the State Game and Fish and the land office have an agreement to make sure that some of that money goes back into the land office because hunters can go and hunt on state trust land. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use our lands, but yeah.
So a lot of it, again, it's our land, New Mexicans' land,
Right.
but people who use it, users' rights. I mean, you pay to use it, go hunting. You pay to graze your cattle. You pay royalties to extract the oil and gas.
Right.
What is your feeling of this industry? Do you want it to stay in New Mexico, or do you want it to be annexed away by Texas? I mean, what is your
the oil and gas. Oil and gas industry is really important for our state. Like I said, 97% of the funding is coming in here through oil and gas. I do think we need to find ways to diversify our economy so we're not strictly reliant on oil and gas. Whenever we look at oil and gas, it's a very boom and bust industry. Sometimes the prices are high, sometimes they're low, and we end up going through that process. And there's not a finite amount of time that oil will not last forever. At some point, we will no longer have oil to be extracting. So we need to find ways to better diversify our economy, and we are a place that has great potential for renewable energy, for solar, for wind, for geothermal, and the transmission that goes in and out, and make sure that we continue to have our electricity going. So right now, the current land commissioner has increased the amount of money that we've got from renewable energy by, I believe, 4 or 5 times. So they opened an office of renewable energy that goes and explores opportunities to do renewable energy, and that's continuing to grow as well, and I'd like to continue to grow that. So we have different ways to diversify our economy.
And you're certainly right, the oil and gas will be extracted, but that's why we do have those land grant permit funds to have them, I think it's 70 billion or 90 billion, to have the proceeds, the interest from that, pay generations of education. And I believe that's the idea, is that won't be there forever, but the permanent land grant fund should be.
Exactly. No, the
If
money
we don't tap into it.
If we don't tap into it, too often, and the state land office doesn't really have a say of where that money goes. The state land office doesn't even get money from the money that it generates to operate. The state land office has to go and ask for money from the legislature. But whenever we're talking about oil and gas, we need to make sure, and really anyone who's using our land, we have to make sure you're good partners and you're good stewards of the land. So making sure that we're capping orphan wells, we're cleaning up after spills, we're doing all the things that are necessary to not only think about the short-term money that's coming in, but the long-term effects and the effects moving down the road. That's what's really important, that we're not just so focused on what's happening here in the next 5 years, but what our kids and grandkids are going to have to deal with in the land, and that's one of the things I want to focus on as well.
Very good. Regarding water, which is a precious right that we have,
Yes.
It's tough out there. I mean, we have the fifth largest land mass, but we're in the high desert and the desert, and we just have not much water.
Yes.
So how would your position as the land commissioner affect water rights and our reservoirs and the water for the future?
Yeah, it's making sure that we protect water for a long-term, in a long-term kind of way. And one of the places that I think very specifically this matters is a place like the Pecos River. Right now, the current land commissioner has a moratorium of drilling along the Terrero area, just north of Pecos, on the headwater of the Pecos River, to make sure that there's no drilling, because in the 90s there was a horrible spill that ended up getting into the water and causing huge problems.
What kind of drilling do we have up there, Juan?
I forget the specific type of drilling that is out there. I have walked over the river, the little creek that is in the area.
I didn't know there's
yeah, so this was back in the 90s that there was a huge spill. And the Trump administration has actually opened it up, as taking comments and trying to open that area back up, which has been protected for a very long time. So this is a story that came out just this last week about this. So finding ways to do long-term protection of our water areas, and what the land commissioner can do with executive orders is protecting these areas of importance, like the Pecos, like the headwaters. There are 2,500 acres in that area that you can protect from mining, and the current land commissioner put in an executive order to make sure that that's protected. I also worked for the New Mexico Acequia Commission, where we worked really hard on agriculture and culture and the aspects of being able to grow your own food, and these systems that have been around since the 1600s. That is really threatening a way of life, not only the water, but also the way that people are surviving out there.
The acequias.
The acequias.
How are they being threatened?
With the water that's going to be coming down, if there is any chance of a spill along the Pecos River, they are dependent on those. And, I was just out in Clovis recently, and, people think about Pecos and the Pecos River, and they think about the town of Pecos, right? They think about Santa Rosa. But I went through a bunch of small little towns that are down there in the southeast part of the state that depend on the Pecos River. And those are the kind of ways that we need to be thinking long-term. Is short-term gain of doing some mining here and getting some funding, yeah, that's important. But if we have a spill, we have any kind of these kind of problems, then we're looking at a much more long-term of a process on a resource that is just as important as any here in the state of New Mexico, which is our water.
Yeah, people ask me to ask. I talked to some young people to ask questions, because it's the future. The state of the future is for you and for them. Regarding any mining around Chaco Canyon, preserving that. Tell me.
So that's another one that's going on right now. Just last week there was a 7-day comment period where the federal government was wanting to open up the buffer area around Chaco Canyon. So right now there's a 10-mile buffer area around Chaco Canyon to make sure that it's protected from drilling. The state land office also has an executive order to make sure that state trust land is not drilled in on that area as well. So I want to make sure that we continue that. I was encouraging people via email, via social media to go in and put their comments in to say that we need to protect this area. This is a sacred area to so many people in New Mexico, and it deserves to be protected, and we don't know what can happen if we're not being able to stand up for these areas that are special for New Mexico. We were talking about we're actually very rich here in New Mexico, but I'd like to say we're rich in many other ways. We're rich in our lands, we're rich in our culture, and whenever we're able to step out here and go look at the Sandia Mountains, not many people have those same opportunities. Not many people have opportunities to go out to places like Chaco Canyon and feel how special it is. And they need to continue to be protected in that way, and that's one of the things I really want to focus on.
What else would you like to focus on as land commissioner? Again, Juan De Jesus Sanchez is running on the Democratic ballot this June 2nd election. Again, Democrats, Independents are able to choose that ballot, or they can choose a Republican if they'd like, but he's running as a young man to be land commissioner. You've got some visions. You've been a rancher. You've been a farmer. Your family, you still have a little farm yourself that you grow for you and your family, local crops. Very involved in education regarding Special Olympics, and I think you were a coach as well.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm thinking at such a young age you've done so much. Went to Highlands University, went to UNM, working on your master's degree there, but also you're mentoring a lot of young people.
Right, and I think people ask me why are you running for this? I'm 33, I'll be 34 in a week. But I had a moment really early on. I went to New Mexico Highlands University on a cross-country scholarship, actually. And after my first year of running, I had really bad problems. I had hip problems. I had to get hip surgery. And I spent about a year in forearm crutches where I wasn't able to walk hardly and was in constant pain. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease at a very young age and told myself that I don't know what's promised for me. So I need to go out and do as much as I can for me, for my state, for the people that I love, the things that I care about, because I don't know what's promised moving forward. So at a very young age, I got really involved and kind of flipped a switch on me and said, let's do what we can. Let's be as involved as possible. Like you said, I was a coach for I've been a volunteer coach for the Special Olympics. I coached high school basketball at Valencia High School. I've done a ton of different work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New Mexico Acequia Commission. I worked for Senator Martin Heinrich the last 5 years. And I think some of the vision that I have comes from the life experiences that I have. You mentioned stuff about the ranch and farming and whatnot. My family has a ranch that my great-great-grandfather founded in the 1880s that I grew up around. My grandfather ran it. We grazed cattle on state trust land there. So I've been working on state trust land since I was as big as I could walk, going out there and helping out my my grandfather with the land. I hunt on state trust land every year. I've been on there. I go out there every year and try to feed my family. I like to tell people there's no safer deer than the one I'm chasing with a bow, but I still have the opportunity to go out and do that. And I think that we need to.
Oh, you hunt with a bow?
I try to. Okay. I try to.
Okay.
But one of the things that I see is that we have a lot of people that are wanting to have a say in how our lands need to be treated, but they're not necessarily out in the land and haven't experienced the way that the land operates and have been there on the ground. And I see a lot of times that we're looking and making decisions with lines on a map and dollars on a spreadsheet, not actually with being there on the ground. And that's what I'm trying to bring to this office. So the things that I think about are creating access, long-term access to our lands. Right now, a lot of our federal lands seem to be there's been attacks on federal lands, on possibly selling off federal lands that were proposed last year. We need to make sure that our state lands are around so that New Mexicans can have access to go out and enjoy. When I talk about us being rich, we're rich in being able to go out and enjoy our lands and be outside. It's such a special area, and we need to protect that and create more access for New Mexicans to be able to do that as well.
Is there any thought about selling off state land?
Absolutely not for me. Absolutely not. No, there is no reason that we should be selling off any of our state trust land. We could lease like we do currently, but I am not in the interest of selling off any of our state land. Our state land it's special. It's crucial to us, and
I think sometimes they do exchanges if they're talking about maybe some state land by cities and they need to do affordable housing. They're discussing perhaps exchanging it for other parts of the state.
So swaps are very common. So there are areas like Las Cruces is a great example, where there are a piece of state trust land that is surrounded all by BLM land. And it's in a national monument, the Oregon Desert Peak National Monument. And there's a piece of land there that's state trust land and it's being managed by BLM land, but then when they come up here onto the state trust land, there's really, BLM cannot manage that. So that's one of those places where you can talk with BLM and think about a possible swap where they end up getting that chunk of land. They give us one of their chunk of lands on the exterior, and then we could use that for grazing or whatever it may be for development for the money to start coming in.
You're looking at conservation efforts for these lands. Again, our state benefits from them being productive.
Yes.
But again, I understand they can't be productive if we reap all the benefits immediately, so we have to conserve it to last over time.
Absolutely.
What needs to be done?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that our ranchers are doing out there is they're the people that are out there that are actually on the ground and understand the land, and that's why they have so many grazing leases. So we are trusting our ranching folks who are out there to be really good stewards of the land. We're trusting our hunters who are going out there to be good stewards of the land because right now the state land office has less than 200 employees for 9 million acres. You cannot be everywhere at once. The majority of them are in Santa Fe. I would like to expand our reach and have more employees in different parts of the state. I think that's an important part. But we have to be dependent on good stewards around the state. So ranchers, working with ranchers, trying to find ways that we can help them out to be successful and protect land. That's one of the huge things that's really important to move forward with the land office.
Regarding endangered species, does the land office have control over that, or is it mainly the federal government?
It's generally federal, but what the land office could do is in areas where there are species of, I think of the lesser prairie chicken that was in the on the list of endangered species, or getting close to it as of late. But we need to be doing, what the land office could do is, in the area where there is really strong habitat there, we could work on doing restoration projects on the land around there with outside organizations, or we could also possibly decide, hey, maybe this is an area that we shouldn't be hunting. Even though you cannot hunt these animals, but maybe we try to keep the amount of flow of people who are going in this area to a minimum, and that's the way that we can be helpful. But generally, these type of endangered species things are figured out on the federal level. The state land office can try and find ways to work around the process and be helpful in different ways to make sure there's not as much traffic in the habitat areas.
Philosophically, regarding our state lands, which are owned by all of us, and again, we want to preserve for the future, but we all want to thrive and grow and benefit now as well. There's regarding regulation and red tape and the use and the expense and the royalty fees and such. What's your philosophy on that balance between preserving the land but also using it now to the benefit of our state?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're getting record amounts of money coming into the land office, and I anyone who's going to take over the next job has a huge thank you to say to our current land commissioner, Stephanie Garcia-Richard, who decided to really hold out some of the land and use it as leverage in saying we're going to increase the royalty rate. So now we're having record amount of money that's coming in from oil and gas. So that has been increased. I think it's at a good place right now, and I think it's...
So they would increase the royalties charging them?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially 25% is the max that you can charge oil and gas. Before this legislation passed earlier this year, it was around 20%. So essentially what this law did is it made it so that now you can charge up to 25% on our highest grossing areas where we have really great places of oil, and you can charge that percentage. So now the amount of money that's coming in, and all that did was make sure we matched what Texas was doing. So New Mexico was a bit of a cheap date there, and we increased the royalty rate. So now there's opportunities for us to be a little bit more flexible on trying to find more ways to conserve land, and to also find ways to make sure that our land is protected in a more long-term kind of situation. So she did us a great benefit to be able to do that. And now I'm in the mindset that we should be working this balance of making sure we're protecting areas that are special and continuing to checking out places like Chaco Canyon, Caja del Rio, headwaters of the Pecos. I mean, right now we have a moratorium of making sure we're not drilling within a mile of a school and I want to keep that going to make sure that the air is not being, our children are not having to breathe in the air around those areas. Like, these are the things that are really important, but the current land commissioner does a really great service.
If they raise the royalties to 25%, is that when the discussion started, when Lee and Eddy County were saying, enough's enough? You're not you, but the state is not respecting the oil and gas industry. We feel like a stepchild. We feel like we're not part of the state. We feel abused. We're giving the state back so much, but you, on the other hand, are affecting us with regulations. And perhaps that 25% royalty, is that when the discussion started regarding them wanting to, leave, really to bring attention to how important that industry is and how they feel they're not being respected by the state legislature?
I don't know what the cause was behind, if that had anything to do with it, but if they were to go to Texas, which they are not going to, they would be having to deal with the same level. All we did was put it on the same even playing field, that the same way that Texas charges 25%, we're going to do here in New Mexico as well, which is only fair.
Juan De Jesus Sanchez is a Democrat running on the Democratic primary ballot for State Land Commission. The election, of course, is Tuesday, June 2nd. We have a few minutes left. What have I not touched upon that you'd like to share about what makes you different from the other candidates? Again, we know your history, many generations here in the state. You're a hunter, you're out in the land, you're a rancher, farmer. What else would you like to share?
Yeah, so like you said, we've been here for 13 generations. My family's from some of the land grants out here.
The Tomé land grant.
Tomé land grant, yes. Tomé, Atrisco, La Jolla, all these different land grants that my family's been here for 13 generations. And we've been caring for the land for that time. And I think it's hugely important that whenever we're looking at managing land, we're not just thinking about what works now, but we're thinking about what has worked in the past, because the land was in a lot better shape 100 years ago than it is right now. So what I'm trying to bring is traditional, handed down generational experience and mesh that with my professional experience, which is...
What's an example of improving it? Maybe it's worse off now 100 years because we've been using it for 100 more years, but what kind of hands-on different things could we do to the land to improve it?
Yeah, so I come with this main concept, and I always tell a story about what my grandfather kind of taught me as a young child. And I tell a story of being about 5 years old and going out to my family's ranch, and me and my cousins walking across the road and rolling rocks down the hill, and thinking we're having a good time. And then he came back and told me, "Well, I hope you had fun. Now go and put every one of those rocks back where you found it. We leave land better than how we found it," and that has not been the case. There has been a lot of situations in which people will go and exploit land and then just leave it to be bare, and those towns are no longer around, and we got the money out of it, and now we're not doing the work that we can. The way that I'm going to manage the land office is that same kind of concept of, if you're going to cause any problems, if you're going to have a spill, if you're going to leave trash, if you're going to be, you need to be held accountable, and you need to be made sure that we are continuing to make sure that the land is taking care of itself. And that's just a core, it's kind of core to who I am and core to how I was raised. And it's one of the things that I want to make sure I continue, because we can't just be making decisions about right now. 100 years from now, people need to be able to go out and enjoy New Mexico the same way we have been able to.
You said in the past 100 years it isn't as good now as it was. What types of things are happening that you're aware of?
There are situations where we have overdevelopment, right? Like there are situations where we're building in places that maybe might have been a sacred area that should have been protected, that people use to gather herbs, to go hunting, to do whatever it may be. We need to be thinking long term, but also with an eye on the past of what these lands have been used for. So whenever we're making a decision on the land, we need to be making it thinking about what has been used. What has this land been used for? And before we make a decision of doing any kind of development on it, figure out if it being able to continue to serve that purpose of hunting, gathering, whatever it is, for the next 200 years outweighs the amount of money that we're going to bring for a 20-year project. Then those are the kind of issues that we're thinking about. And I don't think we were thinking that way a long time ago. We were thinking about development. We were thinking about the money that was coming in at the time.
Juan De Jesus Sanchez, again, thank you so much for being part of this program as a young man, for all you've done for our state and what you're hoping to do for the future. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching the program. My guest today was Juan De Jesus Sanchez. He's running as a Democrat on the ballot this coming June 2nd in the primary for Land Commission. Thank you for watching the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater, is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program, email us at info@kchftv.org or call us at 505-345-1991. Join us again for Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater.